What if the pursuit of absolute power could literally destroy your bloodline? For over 6 centuries, the Habsburg dynasty ruled much of Europe, obsessively marrying within their own family to preserve their divine right to rule. But this chilling strategy would ultimately create a genetic nightmare that would bring down one of history's most powerful empires. Coming in at number 10, we find Maria Theresa, the Habsburg matriarch, who desperately tried to save her dynasty through strategic marriages. Ruling the Austrian Empire for 40 years, she bore 16 children and orchestrated their unions across European courts. Yet even her careful planning could not escape the family's cursed bloodline. Her daughter Marie Antoinette would lose her head in the French Revolution, while her son Joseph II died childless, plagued by mysterious illnesses that modern geneticists now link to centuries of Habsburg inbreeding. Maria Theresa herself suffered from severe depression and physical ailments that haunted her reign. But her struggles pale in comparison to what her descendants would endure. Stepping into number 9, we encounter Franz Ferdinand, whose assassination sparked World War I, but whose personal life reveals the ongoing Habsburg genetic crisis. Born with a cleft palate and suffering from chronic tuberculosis, Franz Ferdinand represented the dynasty's weakening bloodline. His controversial marriage to Sophie Chotek, a mere countess, outraged the Habsburg court precisely because she offered fresh genetic material the family desperately needed. Their children showed remarkable health compared to other Habsburg offspring, proving that outbreeding could have saved the dynasty. Instead, his death in Sarajevo ended any hope of genetic renewal, setting the stage for the empire's collapse. However, his fate seems merciful compared to our next entry. Coming in at number 8, Crown Prince Rudolf embodies the tragic mental consequences of Habsburg inbreeding. The only son of Emperor Franz Joseph and Empress Elizabeth, Rudolf displayed the classic signs of Habsburg genetic decline: severe depression, paranoid delusions, and violent mood swings that terrified the imperial court. Contemporary accounts describe his erratic behavior, including his obsession with death and occult practices. His mysterious suicide at Meierling Hunting Lodge in 1889, alongside his teenage mistress, shocked Europe and eliminated the direct Habsburg succession line. Modern psychiatric analysis suggests Rudolf suffered from bipolar disorder and severe anxiety, conditions now known to be amplified by inbreeding. But his psychological torment was nothing compared to the physical horrors awaiting us. Stepping into number 7, we discover Margaret Theresa, whose brief life illustrates the devastating reproductive consequences of Habsburg inbreeding. Married to her uncle Leopold I at age 15, this Spanish princess died at just 21 after giving birth to 4 children, only one of whom survived to adulthood. Her marriage to Leopold represented the ultimate Habsburg strategy. She was simultaneously his niece, his first cousin, and descended from the same great-grandfather through multiple lines. Court physicians noted her constant illnesses, premature aging, and the shocking infant mortality rate among her offspring. Her portrait by Velázquez shows a pale, fragile child already bearing the physical markers of her doomed bloodline. Yet, her suffering was brief compared to the prolonged agony of our next Habsburg victim. Coming in at number 6, Leopold I exemplifies how Habsburg inbreeding created rulers unfit to govern vast empires. Born with the characteristic Habsburg jaw so severe he could barely chew solid food, Leopold spent his 47-year reign battling not just external enemies, but his own genetic demons. Contemporary accounts describe his chronic digestive problems, severe depression, and the constant pain from his malformed skull that caused debilitating headaches. Despite 3 marriages to close relatives, producing 16 children, only 3 survived to adulthood, and 2 of those suffered from severe mental disabilities. His court became a medical nightmare, with royal physicians constantly treating mysterious ailments that we now recognize as autosomal recessive disorders. But his physical ailments seem minor compared to the psychological devastation of our next entry. Stepping into number 5, we encounter Maria Anna, whose life reveals the hidden female suffering within the Habsburg dynasty. As the daughter of Leopold I and his niece Eleanor Magdalene, Maria Anna inherited a double dose of Habsburg genetic defects. Never allowed to marry due to her severe physical deformities and mental instability, she spent 71 years confined to the imperial court as a living reminder of the family's genetic curse. Court records describe her violent seizures, inability to speak coherently, and periods of complete catatonia that lasted for months. The family kept her existence largely secret, but servants' accounts speak of her inhuman screams echoing through the palace corridors at night. Her lifelong imprisonment protected the Habsburg reputation while condemning her to decades of genetic torture. And yet her isolation seems merciful compared to the public humiliation endured by our next victim. Coming in at number 4, Ferdinand I demonstrates how Habsburg inbreeding made effective governance impossible. Known as Ferdinand the Benign, for his gentle nature, this emperor was actually mentally disabled, epileptic, and physically deformed to such an extent that he could barely function as a human being, let alone rule an empire. His seizures were so severe that he once had 20 fits in a single day, and his cognitive abilities never developed beyond that of a young child. Court documents reveal that he could only communicate in simple phrases and required constant supervision to prevent him from injuring himself. Despite being emperor for 18 years, Ferdinand never made a single independent decision, with his advisors operating the empire while using him as a puppet figurehead. His reign directly contributed to the 1848 revolutions that nearly destroyed Habsburg power, but his cognitive limitations seem almost fortunate compared to the physical torment of our next entry. Stepping into number 3, we find Joanna, the Mad, whose psychological breakdown reveals the early stages of Habsburg genetic catastrophe. As the daughter of Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain, Joanna married Philip the Handsome of Austria, beginning the fatal merger of Spanish and Austrian Habsburg bloodlines. Her descent into madness became legendary throughout Europe. After Philip's death, she refused to bury his corpse, traveling across Spain with his coffin and periodically opening it to kiss his decomposing remains. For 46 years, she remained locked in the convent of Tordesillas, displaying symptoms that modern psychiatrists identify as severe bipolar disorder with psychotic episodes. Her genetic legacy would prove even more devastating than her personal tragedy, as her children would carry the combined genetic defects of both Habsburg lines. Yet her madness pales before the physical horrors that defined our next victim. Coming in at number 2, Philip IV embodies the reproductive collapse that marked the beginning of the Habsburg end. Despite ruling for 44 years and fathering numerous children through multiple marriages to close relatives, Philip watched helplessly as his genetic legacy crumbled before his eyes. His first wife, his niece Elizabeth of France, bore him 8 children, but 6 died in infancy or childhood. His son, Prince Philip Prospero, lived only 4 years, his body racked with genetic disorders that left him unable to walk or speak properly. Contemporary paintings show the prince as a grotesque figure, his body twisted and his face bearing the unmistakable marks of severe inbreeding. Philip III's desperate attempts to produce a healthy heir through marriage to his second wife, his niece Mariana of Austria, only worsened the genetic situation. Their son would become our number 1 entry, the ultimate victim of Habsburg obsession with genetic purity. Taking the devastating number 1 spot, Charles II of Spain represents the horrifying culmination of 2 centuries of Habsburg inbreeding. Known as El Hechizado, or the Bewitched, Charles was so genetically damaged that his very existence defied medical understanding. Born after his mother endured multiple miscarriages and stillbirths, Charles entered the world unable to walk, talk, or even chew solid food due to his massively enlarged tongue and deformed jaw. His Habsburg coefficient of inbreeding measured 0.254, meaning he was more inbred than the offspring of siblings. Court physicians documented his constant drooling, epileptic seizures, and premature senility that began in his teens. His autopsy revealed a body so malformed that doctors marveled he had survived at all. His heart was the size of a peppercorn, his lungs were corroded, his intestines were putrid, and he had only one testicle, black as coal. Despite 2 marriages, he remained impotent and childless, ending the Spanish Habsburg line forever. These 10 tragic figures prove that power without wisdom becomes its own destruction. The Habsburg dynasty, in their obsessive quest to preserve their bloodline's purity, instead created a genetic nightmare that consumed their empire from within. Their story stands as history's most chilling reminder that true strength comes not from isolation, but from embracing the diversity that makes humanity thrive.